Entrepreneurship is about failing and getting up. I heard a stat that less than 3% of businesses grow to a size of having 10 people, let's say. It's certainly the odds are stacked against us. If something doesn't work, I think not looking at it as a failure, but looking at it as what you learn and how to apply that knowledge on the next iteration is really all that matters, because you're just gathering information.
Hello and welcome to Delusional. I'm your host, Michelle Coyle, and I am here with Seth Casden. Seth, please introduce yourself.
Hi. Hello, everyone. My name is Seth Casden, and I make the impossible possible.
This is the most delusional opening we've ever had. I love it. Seth, tell us what you mean by making the impossible possible.
Sure. Well, obviously it is possible what we're doing, or it wouldn't be impossible. But generally speaking, when things are invisible to us, they seem impossible. And so I've spent the last 25 years bringing an invisible technology to market. And through that journey, I've learned that there's actually a lot of things that are invisible that we understand innately and we don't need explained. But whenever something's new, there's a lot of healthy skepticism around that. So it's been a long journey, and look forward to sharing it with you and your listeners, and happy to answer any, whatever direction you want to go in.
Let's dive all the way in, because 25 years is a very long time to work on something, especially in entrepreneurial land, when a lot of us like to pivot and jump to new businesses and do the next thing. I can imagine that in 25 years, you've hit some significant roadblocks and you have held on to this dream tenaciously. So you can tell us maybe what was the dream and what's happened along the way, and why have you been doing the same thing for 25 years?
Yeah, you're right on the mark there. There's that adage, if I knew ahead of time what was going to be involved, maybe I would have done something else. Never really thought it would be this arduous. The vision and the inspiration was with our founding partner and myself, the inventor, David Hornick, and myself, looking at holistic ways to help people improve their health and wellness and help improve local circulation. And just really by experimenting with different materials that were out there and stumbling along our way in the beginning to kind of put all the pieces of the science together. But what we created and what we invented was a way to harness the body's natural energy, the heat that we're giving off. So while we're recording this podcast, we're both giving off about 100 watts of heat every second. And that's potential, right? That energy just dissipates into the environment and is kind of lost. And so we invented a way to harness that energy, to harness that heat, and turn it into a form of usable energy for the body and give it back to the body. And so our technology converts heat to infrared light. We talked about the impossible, the invisible. Infrared is beyond the visible spectrum. So we don't see it, even though we're surrounded by it. And if you have a military camera, an infrared camera, then you kind of know what I'm talking about, the night vision goggles. So that infrared light, when it goes back into the body, has all of these health benefits. But when you want to say you increase circulation, that's a really high bar of validation. So after we got excited and we got started and literally selling clothes out of the back of the car and just trying to get the product into as many people's hands as possible, we eventually embarked on a really rigorous science and validation path, and eventually we're designated an FDA medical device and general wellness product. Now we partner with some of the leading global brands to incorporate our technology. But still, the majority of people haven't heard about us, don't know we're out there. So we're really working to educate the market and create the market. And it's just really been a labor of love and a passion project for me. And I'm also kind of motivated when people, they tell us it's not possible or you can't do that. That just makes me want to work harder and show, what really is possible.
That's when we hear a lot. It's like, don't tell me what I can't do. Watch me. Watch me do it. That's shared by a lot of delusional people, especially delusional founders. So 25 years, and I don't know a ton about the process of getting something approved as a medical device. I know enough to know that it takes years and that you really have to want to do this thing. And a lot of people that get really, really rich as entrepreneurs they focus in on one thing and they just hold on to that thing, and they don't, it's the focus. It's that we're doing this no matter what, whereas it's tempting to just go do something else. Like I said, I want to rewind 25 years back, because today we hear a lot about holistic health, right? It's kind of cool to talk about. It's kind of popular. But 25 years ago, I mean, that would have been more on the fringe. That would have been on the woo-woo edge of things. So how many people were like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah. When you tell people you live in California and you put crystals in clothing, you can get a lot of, sideways looks. But yeah, it's funny, when people haven't thought of something themselves and it sounds too good to be true, a lot of times they just dismiss it. We certainly were way ahead of the longevity or biohacking movement, that's grown so exponentially in the last few years. And that was really a challenge, even like my own circle of friends and advisors. They would refer to the product like kind of derogatorily as like magic socks or, magic, like it's just, sprinkling pixie dust on something and waving a wand. And, that's just the nature of things when we're sort of not aware. I hesitate to say the word ignorant because, it's just a lack of education, a lack of knowing the possibilities of what's beyond. But, if you talk to someone like about gravity, they understand if you jump off a building, you're going to fall down and you can't see gravity. And there's a lot of things that we don't see that, we have concrete acceptance and, certainly our own level of satisfaction and proof, even if they're not visible, right? Like we know our cell phone's going to work and we're going to hear a conversation through invisible wavelengths of sound. And frequencies that we can't see, but we know the phone works, so we believe it, even if we don't understand how or can't explain to someone how it works. And for us, that's been a challenge, is really educating people on how it works and not making it sound too scientific, but just kind of breaking it down into some simple examples. And really, for us, we wanted to just help people with everyday aches and pains and look at things that can either supplement or help alleviate the need for medication that might have other side effects or require other medication. And some areas of the body are just a little harder to treat, right? If you play tennis and you hurt your elbow, you can put a sleeve on it. Or if your knee's sore, you can put a sleeve on it. But when you're talking about other parts of the body, like the hips or the shoulder, it's much harder to kind of isolate and treat that. And so by having fabrics and textiles that can help support the body, then it's just embedded into our everyday lives. Like the shirt I'm wearing right now is an Under Armour Celliant shirt, and it's loaded with millions of minerals that are constantly generating infrared light and putting it back into my body.
That's so cool. And I was just about to ask you, you said you were partnering with some major brands. So Under Armour, obviously a major brand. What other big brands are incorporating your tech now?
So we're really global, an international company. In Europe, we have Decathlon. They're one of the largest sports retailers in the world. In Asia, we work with Eon, which is a very large retailer. And then in the US, we work with a really wide range of products. So we work with KT tape for kinesiology tape. We work with Curad, which has braces and wraps with Celliant. We're in bedding companies like Bear Mattress and Athletics and Pure Care. That do sheets and top of bed products and also mattresses. We're with a brand called Defend that does work with the military and also with college and professional teams. Chimera. There's a whole host of brands that have different specialties. Excel wetsuits. I'm sure I'm forgetting some that I wish I would have remembered now, but we have about 65 brand partners.
Nice.
In Europe, Technica ski boots is another one that we really are proud to partner with. And so at the end of the day, any type of textile can have our technology embedded into it.
That's so cool. So if you don't mind me pivoting to mindset for a second, people were calling your stuff magic socks and they're, like you said, they're being derogatory. What mindset did you need to cultivate to be able to be like, hey, fuck off, I know what I'm doing and I see the big vision, and kind of to hold on to your vision in the face of a lot of doubt or ridicule from other people?
Yeah, that's kind of the lonely journey of an entrepreneur. And some of the earliest challenges were like going into meetings, having done all the prep and getting everything ready and bringing in samples. and then basically realizing that people have just kind of brought you in to like laugh at you, make fun of you, to, I've had people like throw product at me and tell me, basically like throw me out, like saying they can't believe that I would think that they would believe this is true. And
Wow.
so there was a lot of like, why am I doing this? Like, why is it so hard if this is such a great idea? And, I think that's just part of, for whatever reason, the journey that I've been on. And I had my own personal experience with the technology, and, there was never really any type of second guessing or doubting on my part. Um, I just sort of trusted that eventually the truth would kind of come to the top. And it was certainly the hardest in the beginning, even from us to try and explain it, like that arch and that improvement over time of really being able to simplify and explain how it works has evolved. And it's hard to just put it on one thing as to why we like persevered, but I think it's just the foundation and the belief in the science, along with the determination, and then along with the feedback of the people that it was working for and helping. And you just kind of like tune out all of the distractors and the naysayers and kind of the haters and people that maybe don't want to see you work because they're jealous or it wasn't their idea, or they weren't able to put it together. And we've had a lot of different challenges along the way, and everyone presents its like unique opportunity to overcome that. And it really is just a story of perseverance and like belief and faith in the science winning out over the long term. But there's a lot of inflection points where it wasn't really clear that we would be able to continue.
Oh, I'm sure. And I mean, the thing about getting brought into pitch just so people can laugh at you sounds more like something that would be in Mean Girls and less about, something that would be in a professional corporate environment. I mean, that's unbelievable. I'm curious, Seth, because I don't know you personally. And I told you before we started recording, hey, rather than talk about everything beforehand, let's just get to know each other. Let's just hit record and get to know each other. But I'm wondering, are you or were you married or seriously partnered with anybody during this journey or in the beginning of it? And how did your partner react to, hey, I'm going to spend my life making magic socks? How did that go?
Yeah. I started this when I was about 25, and I was very young and naive and thought this was going to be like a huge success, like very quick. And I would bathe in the success for, the rest of my life. And couldn't have been further from the truth, right? It's something that, we joke we're a 25-year overnight success. I have a son who's 10, almost 11, and I co-parent with him, and he came along, really, really in the middle of this journey. And it's been hard balancing personal life and professional life at various times because of the demands of travel and having really to commit so much more than just what you typically would think in an 8 to 5, 40-hour work week, to just keep, pursuing all the opportunities and trying to not leave any stone unturned. And there's always like one more thing that you can do and one more idea. And that can be hard if you don't kind of rein that in and realize you have to start saying no to some things. So I'm still single from that respect. And, I had thought in my mind, best laid plans that I would get this company up and successful so that I could really support and dedicate my time to a family, because that takes a lot of time and energy too, and just never really reached the point where this company's been sort of on autopilot. So, now that I've passed the 50-year mark, I think, kind of shifting around and trying to prioritize or create space for a longer term relationship. And, maybe there'll be more kids. I don't know.
But at the moment, you're a single dad, and I want to dive into that because I'm a single mom entrepreneur too. And I wasn't always, right? I was married for a while, and being married and being an entrepreneur is hard enough. But at the time I was married, I had a spouse that was bringing in a very good income. We had a nanny, we had help cleaning the house. I mean, like I had a personal assistant at work. I mean, there was a whole team of people making this happen, and I was able to really focus on work. I mean, I was a good mom, but I was able to really focus on work and being a mom, and kind of a lot of other stuff was handled. Being a single parent, and an entrepreneur is a whole new level of difficulty. There's no nanny here. There's no housekeeper. There's nobody else paying any of the bills. And, my kids are older now. They are 19 and 12, but they have learned, hey, sometimes we're having a good month and sometimes we're having a bad month. Sometimes we're going on international trips and sometimes we're, really counting our pennies to make sure we can buy groceries that week. And they've gotten kind of used to that lifestyle. But man, it's like going from playing a game on, level medium to level extra, extra hard. Can you talk to us a little bit about your experience single parenting while you do this?
Yeah, it's another full-time job. And I think it's the hardest when I'm trying to balance those things. Being an only child, my son, when he's with me, expects to be with me. And
Yeah.
so if I'm trying to do emails or have calls, particularly when he was younger, it was very, very challenging and had to kind of try and schedule everything around the time that I had him. And, when I take him to school, it's a pretty long commute there and back. And then you get home for a couple hours and you got to turn around and go pick him up and come back. And then, once you get home on a school day, like there's really no more work time because you're doing dinner, you're helping him with his homework and, getting him in the bath and reading. And then you're basically, I usually fall asleep before him. It's like,
Yeah.
you're just exhausted. So the idea that, you put him to bed and then have a little bit more bandwidth to do other things, it doesn't usually work out that way. So, there's definitely been some adjustments, and I've had to, say no to things in the past that I would have done if I didn't have that responsibility and obligation. But the other side of the coin is I can work my schedule around, so I can be at his school when he's performing or if he has a special event, and a lot of the things that you just don't have that flexibility when you have a traditional job. So I try and look at the glass as being half full.
Yeah, I appreciate those aspects as well. It occurred to me the other day that I was like, wow, because I work from home too. And I was like, wow, I've really figured out how to be both a stay at home mom and a working mom because I'm here. And I have my oldest son is in college now, so he's moved out, and my youngest son is here 50% of the time, half the time he's at his dad's. And so the time that he's here, it's like I really only work maybe 3, 4 hours a day. It's like you said. And then I try to be really, really present with him. And then when he's gone, I'll work all night. You know what I mean? Like I really flex my schedule to kind of make up for it so that I can be that mom that's like, he's in middle school now. So he walks through the door at 2:45 and I'm like, how was school? I'm here. And
Yeah.
as they get into those tween and teen years, there are functions that nobody else can replace, right? This is what I wish somebody had told me. And I'm going to say this for anybody listening or watching who has smaller kids. Because when you have smaller kids, I mean, of course, they need their parents, but there's so many of their needs can be taken care of by somebody else. Somebody else can feed them, somebody else can change their diaper, somebody else can drive them or pick them up. Once they get into those tween and teen years where the parenting becomes much more about like emotional labor and coaching and taking care of their mental state, nobody else is going to do. When they break up with their first boyfriend or girlfriend, they want mom, they want dad. It's not, oh, let me go talk to my nanny about that.
Yeah. And also, just to build on that, it just goes by faster and faster. So I know
Yeah.
I've got another, 5 or 6 years with him, and then he's off to college. And so I'm just trying to cherish that time and be present, like you said. And, one of the things I work on is really identifying my thoughts. And I have a very active brain in terms of just constantly generating some kind of internal dialogue. And I've really the last few years worked at filtering that. And particularly when I'm with my son, if my thought is about the something in the past or something in the future, I just kind of try and cancel it out and just be thinking about what it is I'm doing at that time. And um, putting away the phone as much as I can. I'm sure if you asked him, I'm on it all the time, but I feel like there's a lot of times that I put it down and put it away so that I can be present. And I know that, one day pretty soon he's not going to want to hang out with me anymore.
Yeah.
So it's, try and take advantage of it while I can.
I mean, that's really it, right? And now I feel like I have to like work on them to put their phones down more than, like I can put my phone down, but like, can you guys put your phone down? And what I didn't realize is that once they turn about 16, I mean, once they get that car, like that's really, they're in kind of trial adulthood, and then you get calls when there's a crisis. Mom, backed into somebody in a parking lot. What do I do? That was one of mine. But other than that, it's like, oh no, I thought I had you till 18. I really kind of
Yeah.
had you till 16. Yeah, it's sad. I'm coming off of Seth family weekend at college. So we just went up and visited my son. And I hadn't seen him since he went to school like 2 months ago. He was home for the summer. He went back to school 2 months ago. And then we just went up for family weekend. And that's the longest I've ever gone in his life without seeing him, is 2 months. And it's hard. It's like, you're an adult, you have your own life, like you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do and getting educated and meeting people and learning things. But, ooh, this is kind of hard on mama. Um, it's really hitting me how little time I have with him kind of for the rest of his life now, that I'm going to see him for little visits every few months. And it's just totally different than having a kid. I'm going to start crying. I got to let you talk.
Yeah, it's a definite transition. And when you look, I've seen like charts that show how much time you spend with your kid. When they're young, infant, it's 365 days a year. And then, once they're after 20, it's a handful of days a year. And,
Yeah.
you probably spent 90% of the time, if you looked at all the days you're going to spend, 95% of it's gone.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard adjustment, and one that I'm not looking forward to.
Well, a lot of people think that it is delusional to be an entrepreneur and a parent at the same time, or to be especially an entrepreneur and a single parent. Like I said, level extra hard. I'll acknowledge that for sure. I'm living it. And I don't know about you, but when I first found I was pregnant with my oldest son, that's really what lit a professional fire under my ass. So people have asked me throughout the years, and maybe women get asked this more than men, but it's like, how do you do it? How do you have this career and be a mom? And it's like, well, I have this career because I'm a mom, because as soon as I knew he was going to come in the world, I started forming ideas. And I was young. I was 24 when I got pregnant with him. And I was newly married. It's just like, I actually got pregnant like a couple months before the wedding. It was very stressful. I had to get my dress adjusted and everything.
Yeah.
But it was, oh, wow, it's not fuck around time anymore, because now I have this person. We didn't have tons of money at the time. It was like, I got to figure something out. I got to figure out how to support this person. And I don't think that I would have had anywhere near the career trajectory that I'd had I not had that kind of good pressure to care for someone else. Now, you were already 15 years into your company by the time you had your son, it sounds like. But did it change how you thought about work when you became a provider?
Absolutely. And we were, my son was born in December of 2014, and we had been kind of in crisis mode for a few years. And we had really just lost our largest customer at the time. And we actually had a deal to sell our company to one of our customers, to sell 51% of our company. And that was going to bring in cash. And I was going to stay on to run the day to day, but we'd have a minority interest, and we actually had a binding signed contract that the customer or the buyer was in China, and then the Chinese banking system kind of collapsed at that point, and they walked away from the deal, and we had no way to enforce it, and so we were kind of left scrambling. And with my son coming, I felt like, just like you said, well, I have to be serious. I have to think, beyond my little, pet passion project here. And, this has to be a real company. And I had given myself basically 30 days to complete some friends and family funding. Or I decided that, as hard as it was going to be, I needed to shut the company down. And we got the funding like 15 days into that. And so I was like, okay, this is a sign. I need to keep doing this. It's going to work, and to stay with it. And there's been other inflection points, but having my son born really like clarified for me, like, what is the goal? How am I going to achieve it? It needs to be on a path that I can measure milestones and see the progress. And I really, that really resonates with me, because it just, everything kind of gets put in perspective when you have your first child in a way that, you can't really understand or experience unless and until you have a child.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm sure that you have things that you want him to model from you or learn from you. Like, what is it about being an entrepreneur that you want to pass along to him? I'll tell you, when I first joined EO, I had a very meaningful experience. Sorry, EO is Entrepreneurs Organization. My producers always get on me when I use acronyms and I don't explain it. Entrepreneurs Organization, which is a really cool worldwide organization where entrepreneurs get together and really have like entrepreneurial group therapy, I would say. That's the best way to explain it to lay people. But when we were first in training for this process, there were some really seasoned entrepreneurs on the call, and there were some entrepreneur parents that were younger on the call. And it came up, there was a vulnerable share from somebody who said, I really worry about how this is going to affect my kids because I'm, like I work all the time. I'm always on my phone. I worry about this. And there were several people on the call who either had grown children or whose parents had been entrepreneurs. And universally, all the shares were like, I learned so much watching my dad. I learned so much from watching my mom. My kids tell me how much they learned from watching me be an entrepreneur. It was such a heartening call for me, Seth, because I had been, dealing with the same insecurities. And to hear, oh, here's what I got from watching my parent follow their dreams was just, man, that was fuel on my fire. So like, what do you want your son to learn from watching you?
Yeah, that's a really interesting insight, because one of the things you don't realize until you become a parent is just how much they are watching you. And they, hear everything, see everything, things that you don't even realize you've done, they remember and bring up. And I've had some really funny questions from my son about things that I'm like, well, where did you hear that? And he's like, oh, I heard you talking to your lawyer. I heard you, saying this. And I just have to kind of chuckle and remind myself that like, they're just a sponge. Right. And, to your point, like, it's great that he sees my dedication. It's great that he sees my commitment. He knows who all my employees are. I've had him, come to one of the holiday dinners. Like, he's very interested. He loves the empowerment and the agency that it gives. He understands that I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to make the wrong call. Some people I hire, then I have to let them go. They're not the right fit. And so he has like a really good grounded sense of kind of how to go through life. And it's not about being perfect. It's about having a clarity with yourself that you develop so that you can see things and you're open to the mistakes that could be made. Because if you don't have that confidence and you're just kind of in a denial state and you have trouble admitting, when you need to course correct, you're just going to go further and further off course. So, for me, it's been very humbling, and I kind of lean into the mistakes I make and explain them. And we do a lot of case studies so that he can take that information and understand in his life and be looking out for things that, so he doesn't have to make the same mistakes, hopefully, that I've made. And, I think he's really proud of what we do. And it's wonderful to see him, tell people, explain what we do. And I see that he takes a lot of pride in that. And I just want to continue to be a good example for him.
I love that you bring up that making mistakes and recovering. I think that's one of the coolest things we can model for our kids. When I coach a lot of startup entrepreneurs, and one thing that comes up, and I'm talking about people who've never had a business before, either in the pre-stage or right when they start, is I'm so afraid to fail. I'm afraid, that fear of failure. And I tell them like, well, I'll take it away from you right now because you're going to fail. You're going to fail all the time. And like being an entrepreneur is about failing and learning and failing and learning. And you're going to fail way more than you succeed. The success is so exponential compared to the failure. That's the game that we play. Like that's the risk. I'm wondering if you would share with us, because I know there's a lot of folks in that category that are watching or listening. What's one time that you just like ate it hard in business, that you failed so hard, and like how did you come back and what happened after that?
Yeah, I've got a lot of those stories.
I'm sure you do in 25 years. Yeah.
Yeah. This company that I'm on, Hologenix, it's my fourth company, and the first three all failed. So the first company I started was actually managing a rock and roll band, a rock reggae band called Cripplefish. And managing artists, is always challenging. And, I was very happy. We had them booked up and down the Sunset Strip and had them doing a show in Mammoth. And the band basically just imploded. And one of the guys absconded with all of the equipment. And we got a phone call from a anonymous number in Texas that he was sorry and it was too much pressure. And, would we forgive him? And I mean, just stuff that, belongs in a book or a movie, and just kind of shaking your head. And, went on to, in the beginning, I think I was very naive to just the world. And I thought, if I'm trustworthy, then the people I meet will be trustworthy. And you also want to believe things are going to work. At least I do. Like, that's just kind of inherently, I'm positive thinking, well, this will work. This will work. And, if you're not working with ethically, morally, grounded people, then they just kind of see you as a mark and want to target you and see how they can take advantage of you. And so my next deal was like rehabbing homes. And the partner I had in that turned out to be using the money I was investing to like finish other projects that he hadn't had the money to finish. And then so there was no money to do our projects, and started getting calls from the bank and realized, that I had basically lost that money. And yeah, it's, you can't be too hard on yourself because you're doing it with the best information you have. And, hindsight's always 2020, and you can look back and be like, oh, if I would have done B instead of A, and maybe I wouldn't be here. But it's really more about what are you going to do with that experience? And like you said, entrepreneurship is about failing and getting up. And I heard a stat that like less than 3% of businesses, grow to a size of having, 10 people, let's say. And, it's certainly the odds are stacked against us. And it really requires a healthy perspective on like what failure means. And, like the Thomas Edison, he didn't fail at making a light bulb 10,000 times. He just found 10,000 ways that it didn't work. And so, if something doesn't work, I think not looking at it as a failure, but looking at it as what you learned and how to apply that knowledge on the next iteration is really all that matters, because you're just gathering information.
Absolutely. It's data. And in NLP, sorry, neuro-linguistic programming, we say there's no failure, only feedback. And I'll tell you, as a business coach, it's been helpful for me to know, well, not only did I learn something from that failure, but I've learned something that I can then pass on to other people. Now, I don't expect to learn people's lessons for them, right? I can't protect all of my clients from having any kind of failure or heartache or whatever, but I can at least give a little bit of perspective and advice based on the fact that, like, oh yeah, I've done this before. Like, this is what happens. And guess what? Nobody comes and breaks your legs, and you live and you figure it out. I'm sure there are people listening who have some financial curiosity about your situation, because you went through multiple companies. You said, like you said, got your money kind of misappropriated, whatever. How were you getting funded this entire time to keep trying? And obviously the company you have now, you must have gotten big investors, or, how did that work for you?
Yeah. Well, I've been really fortunate. I had some seed money, and then also, the friends and family rounds that we've done, the people that have had personal experience with our technology that want to invest and be a part of it. And, frankly, it's been really challenging. So it's really been kind of the hardest part of it, and trying to determine, do we continue? Do we try and scrape together a little bit more money and keep going? Do we just kind of throw our hands up? And that's just like an ongoing evaluation that we have. We've gone from, one person and a bookkeeper when I first started, up to, I think we had 17 people, and then back down. Now when we hit COVID, we went back down to 3 people, or 4 people. And then we went back up to about 12 or 14, and now we're at 7. So, one of the lessons I learned kind of the hard way is when you see things aren't going as you hoped, you really need to act quickly. I'm kind of a softie when it comes to my team. I think of them as my family. And so, particularly in my early, career, I would hold on to people longer than I should have, because there's not a lot you can control when you need to cut budget, other than headcount is kind of the biggest thing, right? Yeah, there's no great answer. One of the things I will share is, we tried for years to get private equity money and VC money, and that community, they have very like clear mandates. So they're either investing in consumer products, or biotech, or medical, traditional medical drugs. And so, we didn't really fit in any of these buckets. And so, we must have collected over 100, 150 no's from that community. And, looking back, it was really the best thing that could have happened to us because of the structure and the pressure to perform. Everything's just taken a lot longer for us than we thought it would. And so it was really a blessing because we would have lost our company to investors. And I know founders and entrepreneurs that have had that happen. And, it's really unfortunate when you basically lose control of your company because you can't pay back your lenders. And so, yeah, it's not something that it's probably been the hardest part of it, right? Is taking other people's money, being responsible for their money, convincing them to invest. And then it's just another layer of pressure.
I think it's so important to talk about this. And obviously, it's one of the things that people don't always like to get into the details about money or their money. When I talk to people that are at the startup stage, there's especially like a certain kind of person, there's a lot of preconceived notion of, oh, you have to come from money to be able to make money or to be able to be an entrepreneur. I didn't come from any money. But they're looking at people like Bezos, whose, parents funded him, or Elon Musk, whose parents had, ran this kind of whole gym empire in South Africa. They're saying, oh, there's no such thing as bootstrap. But if you look statistically, the majority of entrepreneurs really did make it on their own. They really are self-made. And people don't believe that.
Yeah. I mean, for every story of somebody that's self-made, there's another story of somebody that had help. I certainly fall into the latter category. I mean, I've had help, but it doesn't really fix anything. I think people can get, focused on the wrong thing. Usually money is not the reason why something works or doesn't work. And I think that's the thing that we really don't understand, especially from the outside. We think, oh, they got money. It's so easy. And the money most often than not is not the determining factor. I mean, you look at how much money these VCs and private equity firms pour into companies, and they have the same success rate as a regular entrepreneur because they're investing in the entrepreneur market. So, the best minds in the world that are, analyzing these deals and negotiating the strongest terms possible. And, they're failing 6, 7, 8 times out of 10. And, companies are raising hundreds of millions of dollars and just disappearing. So, it's easy to kind of fixate on the money and think like, oh, if I had the money, but really it's the clarity of the idea and the ability to articulate the solution that you solve. And, in our case, I half-heartedly joke that, any business professor at any university would give us an F on our thesis because, business 101, you build a product to meet a demand. And we're trying to create a demand and introduce a product that nobody's heard of or even thinks is possible and didn't know that existed. So, that's really been our biggest hurdle. But, the flip side of that is if you can educate a market around a new technology and provide the solution, you then own the market, right? And so that's always been our vision and our hope. And now with what the biohacking and longevity community has done in terms of validating our science on behalf of us, and more people now understand what infrared is and infrared sauna and know the benefits of infrared. So it's always a unique journey. And it's very hard to make a formula or recipe that somebody else could copy beyond just kind of some of the generic things that you need. But really the execution and obviously you have to pay bills. And so, you can't just quit your job and just, hope that you're going to somehow be successful. A lot of times it has to kind of start as a side hustle. And that's how this started. We both had regular jobs that we were doing at the time and just started scraping money together to get prototypes. And then once we had an investor and a funder, we were able to, make this our full-time focus and, just kind of build incrementally from there.
I love what you said about money sometimes being the least of it. Because when you think about, I guess, what they call Nepo babies nowadays, but it's like for everybody who took money from their family and got started and became a successful entrepreneur, there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people who took money from their parents and just kind of fucked it off, never did anything with it. And so I always will kind of get back on, like, it's not not impressive to take, to be Kylie Jenner and take a couple $100,000 from your modeling earnings and turn it into $1 billion makeup empire, and just because you're a Kardashian doesn't make that not impressive, right? Like, I'll die on that on that hill, because I know, because I know what it takes, and most people don't know what it takes. They think it's just about obviously, if you have a platform, it's easier. If you have startup capital, it's easier. But it's this much of an equation that's this big. So much of it is mindset. So much of it is tenacity. When I hear your story, that's the word that keeps coming to mind, is like, you were just laser focused on this fucking thing and you just kept going at it.
Yeah, that really is what it came down to. Dog with a bone, just not taking no, understanding sometimes the most important thing is figuring out the right question. Particularly like working with different government agencies when, there isn't really a roadmap. You have to figure out, whether it's the post office or the FDA or, the secret lies in asking the right question.
Absolutely. So, what would you tell somebody who's listening to the show who has a delusional dream of any type, and who has been, coming up against naysayers on their dream? What would you tell them?
I'd say the amount of naysayers is usually inversely proportional to how brilliant the idea is. So, if people are telling you you're delusional, you're probably on the right track. And, you're your own best judge of what you're doing, and, believing in yourself when everyone else around you, your family, your friends are, sort of questioning your sanity is usually just a sign that this is a growth journey, and, you want to make sure you're not being reckless in the sense of, jeopardizing your future or your family or, but even then, I mean, you hear about people mortgaging their homes and everything to make something happen. And so I think that there's just an ability to kind of listen into ourselves and hear ourselves. And if the message you're getting is that you're on the right track, then it becomes a lot easier to just tune out and drown out all the people externally that don't see it or don't get it, or, that are too afraid to do it themselves. And you really, regardless of the outcome of the specific project, the beauty is in that journey. And sometimes that maybe sounds cliche or it sounds like an excuse, to try and make yourself feel better. But the things that I've taken away from my journey are about how I've shown up throughout the process. And that's really what's given me the confidence in the world versus, how many units we're selling or, what somebody else may say or may not say.
I love that so much. Seth, thank you so much for being on the show today. If people want to know more about you or sell it, say your company.
Yeah, you're saying it right. Celliant. Yeah, look me up
Celliant.
on.
If they want to know more about you or Celliant, how can they find out?
Please, reach out on LinkedIn, Seth Casden on LinkedIn, and Celliant is Celliant, Celliant.com. You can check out our product or shop Celliant.com for our bedding products that we launch. And love to answer questions and hear from your audience. And please stay in touch. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I'll go check that out. I'm going to go look at those sheets right now. I know my partner, Brad, is going to be all about this. He loves infrared. He's all in that sauna every day. So he's going to geek out over this. And so such a cool 25-year overnight success story. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. And everybody, we'll see you next time.